Hi, this is Lorraine and I'm doing another video, and if you'll give me just a few minutes to clear center and balance my energy, we'll get started. Okay, this has been a interesting week. Feels like it's been about 2 weeks since I've done a video, but it hasn't. And I'm trying. The biggest struggle I had this week, was figuring out how to convey the messages, or actually the message. There was just one really profound message. And so what I realized is it's going to hit a bunch of different concepts, and I have to go back to go forward. And maybe you've seen movies where they start at the end and then they go back to the beginning, explain how we got there to the end. It's a little bit kind of like that. After my last video, what I wanted to talk about in this video, or what I was considering talking about in this video, would be a good starting place, because it goes to the past. The first thing I wanted to do is I went back to one of my old journals, and I found where I first was introduced to Balki. That is one of my hybrid children. So I just wanted to read what I had written. And so this would be June 18th. And I woke up in the middle of the night. Normally when things happen in the middle of the night, I wake up, I get a little flashlight, and I write it down in that moment. So this is what I wrote. June 18th, 2019. Someone standing next to my bed between the fan and my bed. They stepped back. I could see the blinds moving as if someone had moved them aside to walk through them. It was a shadow, short and skinny, no discernible shape, felt rectangular. I thought, not now, I'm sleeping. Then it stepped back. June 19th, 2019. Sorry, I wrote the wrong year here. I meditated on the visitation last night when I realized it was a small being. Not a small being, but a child. I apologized for shooing him off. He was small, I believe a toddler, maybe 3 years old, but more aware. He had literal black skin, I could see the whites of his eyes. His eyes were like ours. He had red hair, like a redhead. It was short, but kind of thick, and or stood up or out. Kind of reminded me of an anime character. Very sweet. Very young. Just wanted to spend time with me, like children do. We went for a walk during my afternoon meditation. And then I drew a little picture. I'll do a picture-in-picture for that, of what he looked like. Then June 20th, 2019, and I started reading, and I just thought, I'm just gonna share this with you because I think it's important. I think it's important to share some of this stuff now. Pixelating red and black opening of wormhole, even two wormholes side by side. Pixelating shapes like an eye where the pupil is. It is open with a planet in the middle. I believe my little boy is showing me the world he is on. It was far in the distance, but reminiscent of Earth, i.e. blue and white coloring. Then the wormhole split, and there were two side by side. After I got out of the tub, the name Balky came to me, like the character in Perfect Strangers, the sitcom. It's the little boy with the black skin and red hair. The space was black, the wormhole red, as opposed to the traditional white. So I just noted that the space around the hole was black and the wormhole, the actual wormhole, was red. And normally when I've traveled through wormholes in the past, they were white. And so I just wanted to share that because I talked about him and he'd come to me a lot at that time after that, and then he hadn't come in quite so much, and then the last 3 weeks he's come in very strong as a teenager, but last week he came in again as a toddler, like a 3-year-old, and he's been crying a lot, and he's been wanting to be held and wanting to be with me. And one of the things I said 2 videos ago was that I had, the next night, had 5 children that looked very traditional, blonde hair, blue eyes, that had come. I was in bed, I woke up, I looked up, and they were above me, and they were running in circles, like Ring Around the Rosie or something like that, and playing and having fun. And I just burst into tears. And in that video, I didn't explain why. And one of the things is, the biggest reason why is because my kids that I have here in this life with me here on earth, I love so much. And when they were toddlers, I loved carrying them around with me, and I loved having them with me and hugging them and touching them and having them tell me they loved me and I love them. That's such a huge part of this experience here on this world. And as I've grown spiritually and as I've come to understand the nature of our emotions, the depth and breadth of emotions that we have, it's unlike any other world in the universe, literally. The reason why I would cry is because I cried when I saw those 5 children was I can't touch them, I can't hold them, at least not consciously. Not that I'm consciously aware of. I know my higher self leaves and goes and engages them, and even Balky said, I see you every night, you read to me every night. But this physical person, Lorene, does not go there physically and touch them. Not that I'm aware of, not that I'm consciously aware of, although I know my higher self goes. And this experience, such a huge part of who we are, involves our social interactions. Hugging, touching, holding hands, experiencing so much of this part of this world is touch. And the emotions that can be conveyed through just a simple touch. Not just words, not just look, not just telepathic, but the physical engaging of another human being on all levels. It's extremely important here on this world. And that's kind of the heart of what's going to be discussed in this video. Because what we don't understand, because our perception of God, divinity, the source of all creation, is this omniscious being, which it is. It's God or divinity, the source of all creation, created this universe, but created this universe to experience itself from a different perspective. And what we all have to understand, and what we all have to kind of get our head around, because we've separated ourselves from God and we see God up here and we're down here, we don't realize that we're part of God and we're part of this experience. And so the source of all creation is experiencing the depth and breadth of emotions in physical form as a physical being through Earth humans. Okay? That's I guess you could say that's one of the most profound messages that came through this week. But trying to explain this is I think it's important also to explain to you, all this information came to me all at once. Okay, so this doesn't come to me a little at a time. Now, my experience with Balki came 2 years ago, 3 years ago. My experience, other experiences that I'm going to talk about happened years ago. But this understanding of divinity experiencing the depth and breadth of emotions through us for the first time in physical form, and the implications of that, how this education is happening, trying to explain that, it all came in one fell swoop. And trying to break it up and explain it was extremely overwhelming. I think I spent about 2 hours walking around before starting this video, not thinking about what I'm going to say, but wondering how I'm going to do it in a way that is comprehensive and understandable. So from that place, I have to talk about, I'm going to talk about, was watching, so this is what inspired this download of information. I was watching Initiation with Matthias DiStefano on Gaia, and I was watching an episode where he talked about the 12 aspects of divinity, of God, of the source of all creation, of unity. And the Seraphims, the 12 aspects are the Seraphims, or also known as the archangels. And as soon as he said that, it was like, all the information came in. And then I'm sitting on my couch watching it, like in tears. I'm literally in tears, because this is so overwhelming to get this information all at once. And sometimes I shy away from watching these shows because of the information that comes, because I know the second I get it, I have to talk about it. So these 12 aspects, these are 12 aspects of the source of all creation. These are 12 perspectives that are embodied in, let's say, the archangels. They represent certain components of the divine creator. And so I had a friend that talked to me about the Godhead. And so there's a Godhead where unity exists, okay, where the source is unified as one thing. And then there's the fractals that it breaks itself into. And we have these 12 aspects. And then from these 12 aspects, you can break down each one of these aspects even further, okay? Until you end up with a single particle of energy. Until you come up with the smallest fragment of what we know as humans. The smallest fragment of matter, let's just say. And then at the end of the last video, microcosm and macrocosm came to me, okay? This idea, this concept of microcosm and macrocosm. So you have the Godhead, and then you have it fracturing itself into all these parts. And then you have what we consider the smallest particle, a particle of matter. Let's say a particle of energy, the smallest particle of matter. And then if we look at that particle, as small as it is, could be a universe in and of itself. Can you even conceive of that? Okay, just think about that. I mean, it's a bit overwhelming. So I'm going to go back to the 12 aspects because it's important to understand we are going to have to reevaluate our perception of the divine creator. That's what's happening right now. We have to see ourselves in a different light in relationship to the creator of all things. And so if we go back to the 12 aspects, and so let's talk about Uriel. As one aspect is this spiritual devotion through selflessness, service to humanity. That's one aspect of God. And then we have Michael, who represents communication, protection, faith, will of God, omnipotence of God, perfection. And then we have another angel, archangel, Seraphim, Gabriel, which represents creativity, vitality, originality, okay? There's 12 different aspects of God, okay? And so now I gotta go back. I have to go back to another story. When I was going through my separation, my marriage was not doing so well, and I went through 2 years of marital counseling. We ended up separating and divorcing, and that was very difficult. From where I come from, you know, my grandparents were married for 70 years. My godparents were married for 50 years. You know, people just didn't get divorced. So for me to get divorced was really intense. But after 2 years of marital counseling, it was clear it wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to reconcile. For the 2 years prior to that, I had a person that kept coming into my, psychically, energetically, into my field, and I was very concerned for his well-being. I was very concerned for his children, and I was like, why do I worry about this person who I've never met before as much as my children and as much as my own family, my immediate family? I didn't understand. And I did some past life regressions, and I realized that I had shared multiple past lives with this person. And I realized that every past life, he was a profound person in my life. And I realized that when I eventually, after I separated from my husband, I realized that I was meant to meet this person in the future, and that we would move through this transition that humanity is going through together, because it's very difficult. This is a very difficult transition for everybody. And then in 2017, he ended up committing suicide. And it was very upsetting for me. I was very angry. I was bitter. I was resentful. I was heartbroken. We had never met, but I knew what was happening. And my angels and guides kept on saying, okay, We understand you're in pain and you're suffering, but now you have to recenter yourself. Now we need you to drive forward. You have a lot of work to do. You have stuff you need to take care of. We need you to open up spiritually, because this spiritual awakening happens slowly over years. And then actually, I would say it's picked up speed. But in the beginning, to try to awaken me, being from a very rigid Catholic upbringing, conservative Catholic upbringing, and then opening up to this whole other world of universal knowledge, spirituality, releasing dogma, that was an intense journey. And it started very slow, but then it just started moving really fast. But I was completely broken. I was a mess on many levels. I was going through so much with my divorce. I was going through so much alienation, the spiritual awakening, everything happening at once. And my angels and guides are like, you need to, come on, we need you to get it together. We need you to center, focus. We need you to move forward. And I would become very combative with them. And I would say, you need to back off right now. And I'm like, you need to understand, you're not in this physical body. You are not feeling the emotions of this physical body. You have no idea what I'm going through right now. I'm like, you need to help, let me be angry. Let me be bitter. Let me be resentful. Let me be sad. Let me feel the tragic nature of this experience. And I moved out into anger and bitterness and sadness, and then gratitude for the wisdom and knowledge to help me carry through it. But I was in and out of that constantly. And I explained to them, you need to allow me to move through the emotions. You can't ask me to push them aside. Because what I learned from my childhood, all the traumas, is trying to bury those emotions and pretend like I'm strong enough and I can handle it. I had to move through the sadness, the betrayal, the anger. I had to move through all that stuff before I could release it. That was one of the greatest lessons I ever learned from this spiritual awakening. And I had to explain to my guides and my angels, you need to allow me to move through these emotions before I can release them and truly move back to center and drive forward. And over time, over the last few years, I've been able to find more perspective of the whys, and understanding the purpose of these experiences. But in that moment, in those times, I was much more, the extremes of emotions were much greater than they are now. I feel sadness, I feel anger and bitterness, but they don't go to such extremes. I just kind of I've learned to take a few breaths, center myself, and just move forward. But at that time, I was not in a place where I could do that. And that was a lesson I had to teach my guides, because they were on my back a lot. And what I had to explain to them was, I had spent so many lifetimes with this soul, this energy. And the fact that this negative polarity that's on this world right now pushed this soul so far that he took his own life was beyond my comprehension. I did not think that it was even possible. I had spent a lifetime with him advocating for homesteaders. He was an attorney, and I went to college. I met him in college. We married. And we used my family's money, because in that lifetime I was wealthier. My family was wealthy. And we used that money from my family that I inherited to advocate for these homesteaders whose land was being stolen from them by these bullies, by these corporate folks who wanted their land to mine on them, for the railroad or whatever. They would steal it, or they would do whatever they could to get it. And so my husband was an attorney, and he advocated for them, and he fought for them to keep their lands. And we were threatened many times, and one time, I shouldn't say one time, but eventually they got my husband, they took him out somewhere, they shot him, they tied him to a horse, and they drug him to his death, and they left him left him in front of my house, our house, and they said to me, if you continue with his work, the same thing will happen to you. And we had 2 kids, a son and a daughter. I packed them up and we moved to San Francisco. We were living, I think, in the Texas Panhandle at the time, or maybe a little north of that. But I packed up my kids, we got on a train, and we went to San Francisco, and that's where I lived the rest of my life. But we stood our ground. He stood his ground. This soul had been through so many lifetimes of just fighting and being a profound light worker, never giving up, always fighting for humanity, always fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves, always giving this negative polarity the opportunity to do the right thing, always. And then in this lifetime, he did the same thing. He was a beautiful, beautiful soul, but they beat him down in a different way, and he ended up taking his own life. And I was angry, bitter, resentful at this negative energy for what it did. I asked God if it could take me from this life. I'm like, burn me in acid, boil me in oil. I said, please release me from this obligation. I begged for it. I said, I won't take my own life. I will not do that. But please release me from this world. And I was in so much pain. They're like, no, that's not going to happen. But while I'm going through this, my angels and guides are like, okay, it's time. We need you to move back to center. You know, you always have access to him no matter what. He's like a beautiful soul. And one of the things I had to explain to him is, in this life, on this world, being emotional beings that we are, we need that tangibility is so important. Touching, holding, hugging, telling people we love them, telling people they mean something to us. It's required. People who don't have those positive connections from childhood end up with personality disorders, very profound personality disorders. It's a necessary part of who we are. And to say, oh, you can always connect energetically, that's, although it's true, it's clear they are not perceiving the world from our perspective. They're from a different perspective. And I'm just going to add this. When in the past I've done videos about people who channel life forms on different worlds. And so I noticed the higher density, 9th density, let's say, they're supposed to be so high up here, the Arcturans or whatever, they do not have the same perspective as us. And when you get to the middle, like the 7th density, these energies would say, oh, you desire this experience, that's why you're having this experience. And I'm like, you cannot tell people who are living through trauma, oh, you wanted trauma. That not where we are in our evolution, our spiritual evolution. You can't say you're going through hell because you wanted to go through hell. Nobody wants to hear that. And so what I realized is that the beings that are closer to us, who are just coming out of like their 3rd density, from where we are to the next level, 4th and 5th density beings, are much more connected to where we are. So they have more compassion for what they're doing, what we're going through. And so they're much more relatable. When I watch these people channel these energies, the middle, the 7th and 8th densities tend to be a little too, oh, we're so elevated now, and you desire this, we have the spiritual understanding. And they try to explain to us that we desire this. Well, I'm not even going to go and try to explain that right now. That's too, we're going through too much right now to try to explain that. But then you get up to the 10th, 11th, higher density beings. They completely understand that they're so far removed from where we are that they really have a hard time relating to us and what we're going through, because they are so disconnected from this place that we're in. But they have an incredible amount of love and compassion for what we're going through, and patience and tolerance for what we're going through. So that's important to understand. But when my angels and guides, the Seraphims, come in and they start talking to me about that, about moving through and centering myself, and you can always connect with these beings, clearly they have not been in this place, or they're not relating to this place, because they don't understand that how important touch is. So what I found myself doing, and what I realized, is that I'm giving them lessons on what it means to be human. I'm teaching them what we need to help us go through this transition. So a lot of times when I post on my Facebook page, a lot of my people on my Facebook page I've known since I was a little kid, so they see a little bit more of Lorraine personally as opposed to Lorraine psychic or spiritual person or whatever. And when living in Washington State and the mask mandates and what's happening, you know, I feel like a lot of what's happening, people will reap what they sow. And I often find myself saying, you'll reap what you sow, when I comment on the governor's page or whatever, and that I bear witness. And what I've come to understand this week, when all that information came in about the Seraphim and about the emotions and remembering them pushing me to center myself, and I can always touch them, and me getting upset and trying to explain to them that let me move through the emotions. I need to move through the emotions. I'll center myself. I'll move back to center, but I need to move through the emotions. If I don't move through the emotions, I'll hold on to them and they'll fester and it'll get worse. And trying to help them understand that. Allow me to be human in this moment. Allow me to live through these emotions. This physical body needs to go through this in order to be able to release them. As I'm remembering that and then thinking about bearing witness, I realized that they are seeing the world through my eyes. They are experiencing this world through me. And that was extremely upsetting for me. The reason why they needed me to remain balanced is so they can see this world, what's going on in this world through me from a balanced perspective. And it helped me understand even more why I had to go through all the traumas in my childhood. I've about 5 years ago, I was doing readings, and maybe even when I started doing the videos, I would say I needed to find perspective on why I had to go through the traumas. And it wasn't so important as to why at this point, but what's most important is releasing the emotions that I'm holding on to, the anger and the resentment and the feelings of betrayal. And so then this week I find out why I had to go through all those things. And so the Dalai Lama, very profound spiritual leader, but was removed from day-to-day life as a child and was trained to be this spiritual leader, was put into this role, okay? He's never had the same traumas or experiences as other children that he may have been born in the same village as or city. And he was removed. Okay, so his perspective is skewed by being raised in a temple and never really being exposed to everyday living. And my part of my purpose on this world was to experience the life that I had, the traumas that I had, the experiences that I had, moving through those experiences, finding my way out of those experiences, moving back to center, and then driving forward from that place. I have to experience this world, and I have to bear witness to what's going on in this world. I have to experience the traumas of this world, the beauty and the negative components of this world, so I can bear witness during tribulation and post-tribulation. And I have to do it from a balanced place. So I give these beings of love and light, seraphims, all these parts of God, I give them a perspective of this world that is very important during this time. And so they help me to understand my role. And I'm helping them to understand this world. I'm teaching them about this world. I'm teaching them about the depth and breadth of emotions and what that means for humanity, Mother Earth, but also what that means for God, Divinity, the source of all creation. This is the divine source. This is Unity's first go at the depth and breadth of emotions and what that means. And so I'm helping them understand more so how to support humanity and Mother Earth. Because this is the ripple. We are the pebble that's creating the ripple in the universe. And there will be more of us in different forms. That's what the hybrid children are creating. These beings will begin to carry the depth and breadth of emotion. So the reptilians will be able to carry the depth and breadth of emotions. The Arcturians, the Pleiadians, although they look like us, they're not like us because they don't carry the depth and breadth of emotions that we have. So as they fold their DNA into ours, their energy fields will start to carry the depth and breadth of emotions. And so remember when I said when I get visions, when I have visions, it's not just one thing, it's many layers. And there are so many layers to this, and humanity is not ready for all the layers. We're not even ready for beings of love and light, beings from other planets. Most of us aren't even ready to acknowledge that, at least in the United States. So to get these messages and know that humanity needs to start reconciling this information is intense. I don't know, it's just intense. But what I do know, what I've experienced, is that some people who have not been exposed to secret space program or any of this, what would be considered conspiracy theory, let's just say, for lack of a better term, let's just call it that for right now. What I've witnessed recently is that more people are open to the possibilities not, I mean, coronavirus didn't open people up to the possibilities, but I think there is, or I feel like there is so much support, from so much universal support coming in energetically, that's awakening people to not anything else, but there's got to be more than this. There's more than what we know. And so just that possibility, that thought, just that thought opens them up to the possibility, which leads me to this thing I wrote down. As dreamers, we can construct that reality, our reality. We can decide what to do in our dreams. We can manifest our dreams. Oh my. I don't know why I wrote that down, but it seems like a great place to put that in, right? So all these people, if they can just get their head around just opening themselves up to the possibilities, and then focus on positive possibilities, just that alone will create a massive wave of change on this world. And so I'm just going to say, this thing about time just came into my head. And as I talk about time being right now, all time being right now, I talked about that in a past video, or past videos. I think it's important to note that past, present, and future, as we see time in this way, which is different than any other way that any energies perceive time in the universe. These are past, present, and future. They're markers. They're a way for us to perceive experience. Okay? And as we evolve and change and grow spiritually and energetically, our perception of time will change. And so I think if we can start, I think that's a good starting place for people when I talk about all time being now, thinking about past, present, and future as more like markers, so that when you talk about something, you can talk about it in a way that makes sense as past, present, and future. I think that's a good place to start if you don't think of it as time, but as markers. And then as you grow spiritually, you can start opening yourself up to this, a new view of time. Because time really isn't constant. Even Einstein said it stretches and retracts, way back when. So, and I think, God, time and space are the same, just like energy and matter are the same. If you read about quantum physics or you read about physics, you'll start to learn about that stuff. But it's not anything that I can get into depth about in any of these videos, because I understand it enough for me to have a working knowledge, but not to be a teacher. So let me just look in here really quick to make sure that there's... Wow, that went better than I thought. So I'm just going to take a minute to connect and see if anything else comes to me. Oh, okay. As soon as I closed my eyes, the raptors came in really close. Sebastian was like right here, and he was like, it was very protective. That's all I could say. Extremely protective. The other thing is, I had water has a mind of its own. All energy has consciousness. So water has consciousness. Every particle of energy has consciousness. And so what came in earlier today, and I was reminded when I just now, is that we're going to see water having a mind of its own. And I saw the ocean. And so whatever's happening on the water, because we're on land, so this would be witnessed by military. This would be witnessed by, let's say, aircraft carriers, battleships, whatever that's out on the ocean, submarines, by any country. The water is going to have a mind of its own. If the water does not want you to be somewhere, you're not going to be there. It will deviate. It will redirect. Even stop whatever it is whoever you are doing, if this energy does not feel that your actions are for the greater good, especially for sea life, especially for marine life. The beings in the water, as the raptors came up onto me, Sebastian, specifically it was Sebastian, the beings in the water were to the back, but they were in the water, and they were like vigilant outside, in a different energetic space, I guess I could say, but still watching, observing. And not that they thought Sebastian was going to hurt me, but it's a layering of protection. And in the last video, I said that the raptors came in and the beings in the water came in, and they were like ready to do what they were needed to do. And so what their behavior and how they're acting with this layering of protection is, something's happening now. There is something happening in the water. The beings in the water are using their skill set to redirect or influence whatever's going on in the water. And the raptors are in a hypervigilant protective stance. I think their space is secured, but they are definitely in my space, protecting my space. And then we have the beings around the planet protecting energetically the planet. And actually, I forgot, when I first started clearing, centering, and balancing my energy, in the beginning, all the beings around the planet, Sebastian, all the beings in the planet, and I had beings going all the way out off of Earth, kind of, and they were all bowing, very much like when the Muslims pray and they face Mecca, and they all pray at the same time. It was like they were all everybody bowed at the same time, and they went down and they were all facing Earth. And I could see them as I was clearing my energy. I was just sitting here, and all of a sudden I looked, and they're like, it's support, solidarity, gratitude being expressed. That's what they're doing. Support, gratitude, solidarity, love. And then I'm seeing right now, I see Sebastian, and sometimes when the raptors come in, they turn their heads to the side, and I can see their eye, and they're looking at me. And he's in this position, but the sun, his face is in front of the sun, so the sun is right behind his head. Bright, 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 bright. And so all I'm thinking of right now is, last week I said, Mother Earth nourishes, Father Sun protects. And that's what's coming to me right now as I see this vision. So it's just reinforcing the raptor energy, Sebastian, as a protective force. something's happening, something intense. So I'll just maintain clear, centered, and balanced energy. Send love and light energy out. Always ask for guidance. Always ask for support. And always keep myself open as a paladin of love and light. And always do what's asked of me. Driven from the heart center. Always with the intention of what's best for everyone, what's best for the greater good of everyone. Because there's something very intense happening right now. And whenever they do this, it's like it's not important for me to know what, just to know that I'm protected. My loved ones are protected. Continue on your path. You're almost through. Meaning through, not finished, but almost through a major event. Let's call it an event. We are with you. Never feel fear. That's the Raptors. I don't feel fear. Yes, there is a major event, but all is as it should be. We support you, we love you, and that's a collective from all the energies around the planet right now. You will succeed. Be patient. Listen to the messages. Keep doing your light work. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing your light work. They say you will be rewarded, but that's not the proper word. I think when they talk about rewards, they're talking about abundance, meaning energetic abundance, not rewards in the what most people on earth would consider a reward. Meaning like a car or money or something like that. That's not what it's going to be. It's going to be an energetic lift. Look for the rainbow. Seek the rainbow. Seek the rainbow. We will be there. You'll know. They never make it easy. All right. I think that's it. Thank you.